Whether it's betraying your own people in the name of revolution, feeding a little girl to a dog, killing the mother of an illegitimate child, or causing the apocalypse of an entire planet, Attack on Titan has some of the most despicable antagonists in any anime you'll ever see. But what if I told you there are connections between all of them that will leave you shocked? What if I told you that this video may change your perspectives on many controversial characters? Well, strap in and remember to subscribe, ring the bell, drop a like on the video, and tell me who you think is the most evil character in Attack on Titan. These are the most despicable villains of Attack on Titan. Starting off, there is no better person to talk about than, of course, Gross. This guy is on the thumbnail for a reason, and it's arguably because he's one of the most truly evil people we have ever seen in Attack on Titan. He is a person with zero upsides and only exists to torture the followers of Ymir and then turn them into Titans to roam Paradise Island aimlessly forever. Arguably, this is even worse than death, as Ymir herself described her 60 years as a pure Titan as a living nightmare. Though, it doesn't end there. We also know the torture is severe, as Grisha was beaten and mauled horrifically, but maybe most gruesomely had all of his fingers cut off, one by one. And he wasn't a special case. It was everyone. Even his wife Dinah was tortured in the same ways, having all of her fingers removed. Though what makes Gross worse is what happened decades before when Grisha and his little sister Faye roamed outside the walls. Grisha and Faye as kids were curious, and so doing what kids do, they see a Zeppelin and chase it out of genuine curiosity. Leading them to an airfield, they are filled with wonder of what they just saw. Though, this moment wouldn't be a happy memory. It was actually the start of a nightmare. Grisha and Faye were both taken by Aaron Kruger and Gross respectfully and punished for leaving their internment zones. Grisha was beaten, but allowed to finish watching the blimps, as in Kruger's mind, he came all the way here, so he might as well see the Zeppelins. Afterwards, Grisha returned home, but Faye did not. Her fate was much worse. Gross took Faye and fed her to his dogs as he and his colleagues watched as if it was something they partook in as a casual sport. There was no reason for Gross to murder Faye in such a way, but he did. And that's because his environment encouraged such behavior. Marley set up a system where Eldians are seen as subhuman, and thus allowed his sickest desires to take center stage. He does this because it's fun. And while on their own, these words are good enough to condemn a man forever, he keeps going. He says, "People are fascinated by cruelty. Peace is great and all, but it leaves something missing in our lives. I'd say it's the feeling of being truly alive, living on the edge without knowing which day will be your last. That's the natural state of most living things." End quote. For the layman, what this man is trying to state is that for him, the thrill of living is born through conflict instinctually. Peace for him is nice because of what comes with it. But because humans are born to fight, peace can never truly quell the beasts inside all of us that just want to see the world set on fire. That's where humans excel at, and thus is when we are truly living to our potential. He goes on to say that from there that he will accept death because he has grown up in such a hard way that he lives above the very concept of it, and that feeding Faye to those dogs was just another way to steal himself. But still, he has no remorse for her either way, for she was born an Eldian. That was her crime. Gross then finishes saying something truly horrific. The entire world wants one thing, and that's for humanity to witness nothing short of the extinction of all Eldians until none remains. Gross is truly one of the most purely evil men to ever appear in this series, and really there aren't many which come close. Absolutely an evil man. Then we have Rod Reese, the father of Historia. This man has done some really bad stuff, and his reasonings are understandable, but not exactly great. As the true king of the walls, Rod Reese sought only one thing: restore order to his family by taking back the Founding Titan, which Grisha had stolen years earlier after he murdered Frida Reese. Well justified in wanting to get some sort of vengeance and balance back, the man basically has no upside to him at all. From there, the rest, though, is, as they say, Historia. As for a time early on, it seemed Rod relied heavily on Alma, Historia's mother, during some of his most troubling times. This would convince her, even though she were just a maid working for Rod, that she was one of the very few people who truly would understand him. At least, that's what he wanted her to think. So, she fell in love. Hook, line, and sinker. And Rod would take advantage of that situation. Years later, they would deem that Alma and Historia were to be a threat, and thus Rod made the call to kill Alma and Historia, though would spare Historia. While the man had no choice in the matter, as the inner workings, I imagine, are complicated, strict, and insidious to some degree in the government, Rod really showed what he was worth in these moments, which once again is to say not much. These undesired, shall we say, personality traits would show themselves in his ruthlessness as a leader, wanting nothing more than to return the Founding Titan. He would even use Historia to do so, and even would embrace the girl and apologize for all he has done to her. Though we can all see through this, and so did Historia. Rod at this point only wants power, and for him, Historia was nothing until she became a conduit for the return of his power. And it's honestly really funny, but if you think about it, if Grisha had never become the Founding Titan, Historia would have died that day with her mother. And with that, we can easily deduce that Rod simply used everyone he could to get what he wanted, no matter if it were mistresses, Frida, or his illegitimate child. He left a path of destruction and anguish in his wake. And for that, Rod is a very deserving figure on this list. Bag of dicks. Next up is none other than our favorite, Precious Flock Forster. And before all of the super edgy and racist Flock and Aaron weirdos come out of the woodwork, you're wrong. Flock is absolutely evil. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Flock Forster might very well be one of my favorite characters in Attack on Titan for how much of a great villain and antagonist he is. The guy goes from trying to cowardly leave before the charge on the Beast Titan to being the only survivor and turning into an evil dictator with a few screws loose. Obviously, the dude lost his mind in that charge, and from there, he believes that the only way to win against a devil is to become a devil himself. And how does one do that? Activate the rumbling, kill everything outside of Paradise Island to assure the sole survival of the Eldian race. He even ignores the warnings of Kiyomi, Hanji-san, and even the very leader he modeled himself after, Erwin Smith, as all three state in the series that conflict cannot be eradicated like he wants. It will always arise, even if they destroy everything outside of Paradis. The cycle, in other words, will continue, and he's not breaking it, he's perpetuating it. Obviously, the guy is flawed in his decision making, but much like Carl, Fritz has come to the realization that conquering is the only answer, yet never really stops to realize the complicated and morally abhorrent things he's really trying to achieve. For example, he essentially wishes for near omnicide of everything outside of Paradis, including the eradication of all human life, animals, plants, trees, and other stuff. Doesn't matter what side they're on, doesn't matter if they're innocent or guilty, Flock wants it gone. And that, my friends, that's pretty evil. And of course, we can't not mention our boy, Eren Yeager, on this list. The poster child of humanity, the hope of many, became the hope of the few, as over a short period of time, he declined into, well, what he is now. the man who activated the rumbling. And in that sense, all of the things we give Flock a lot of flack for, we can say the same for Aaron, as it was his grand plan. But how did all of this start? I'll tell ya. After witnessing the ways in which Marley and the world think of Eldians by throwing Paradis under the bus, he feels the only thing left to do, his only shot, in seeing that his friends and family make it out of this alive, is to activate the rumbling and eliminate everyone outside Paradis Island. And his manifesto would be the subject of millions of Eldians around the world, as he spoke to them and said, just as Gross did to Grisha all of those years ago. The Wall Titans shall trample all Earth outside of this island underfoot until all life existing there has been exterminated from this world. As we are clearly witnessing, there is some form of commonality between every single one of the men I've listed here today, and they all want one thing: extermination to some extent. Karl Fritz wanted to eliminate all of his enemies, and he didn't care what it took. Flock Forrester believes in the vision of a world trampled and flattened so that his enemies dare not speak an ill word of the Jaegerists' power. Rod Reese wanted to reobtain his power so that he could not be threatened and thusly allow the elimination of their own race. And now, the man who was the symbol of hope for the burgeoning island and its inhabitants became so downtrodden by the world's players and the stage in which they played that he realized there was only one choice, which is the extermination of everything. Eren Yeager might as well be Karl Fritz, and honestly, he's probably worse. At the same time, we can all understand their reasonings and their points, but it's the actions of these men which make them abhorrent, not the commonality we can draw from them. So, just who is the most evil character in Attack on Titan? I'm sure you'll let me know down in the comments below, and I do want to hear them. As well, help support this channel further by becoming a patron to gain access to exclusive content like my One Piece series before anyone else does. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.